All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the This is Raleigh podcast presented by Earfluence Media here in the Raleigh Founded Studio in the Warehouse District. And today we're excited to have another guest with us, Mr. Clark Rinehart, local entrepreneur and interim director of Innovate Raleigh. And I'm told, because this is the first time we've ever met you, that you're one of the most passionate people and energized who wants to make the City of Oaks the best it can be.
I need to pay that person a lot of money. I don't think I pay the PR team enough, so thank you, PR team, for that. I don't have any idea who said that, but that's very kind. Yeah, that's great.
Now, the Innovate Raleigh Summit is on October the 29th.
That's right, next Friday.
Next Friday.
Yeah.
Wow, we're gonna
when we're recording this, at least. I don't know when this will air.
we're gonna get it out before.
There we go. Perfect.
That is the goal. That is the goal. We're going to talk about that in a little bit, but before we get into that, we'd love to hear a bit of your background, like where you grew up, went to school, and if it wasn't in Raleigh, how you end up in Raleigh, and how long you've been living here.
That's great. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I am a Miami native, so I kind of bring a big city, a bit more cosmopolitan view to the Triangle. When I moved here back in 2009 to go to graduate school at Duke, I just remember thinking, gosh, this is really a small town. Now, again, that's granted my perspective is major metro, you know, a totally international city. In my household, we grew up speaking English and Spanish because my mother was raised in Guatemala. And so very much steeped in a Latinx culture. And miss a lot of that, but kind of bring that big city building type of perspective to the Triangle. I grew up in Miami, 22 years there, was fortunate to go to University of Miami, which is a lot smaller school. Hurricane, that's right. So I get a little tripped up here in the Triangle when people have red and have different types of hurricane signs than I imagine as green and orange in my imagination.
That's right, like the Carolina Hurricanes.
Depending on when this comes out, I hope that there will be a Miami win on Saturday when NC State travels down to Miami for a football game. So we'll see. I could be ridiculed on the podcast, or I could be riding high. We'll see.
I have to mention though, even though we live in Raleigh, we have a site called This is Raleigh. Right. We're actually Tar Heel fans. Yeah. So we could talk about the game recently.
That was terrible. Actually, that was tragic for me. I'm still recovering.
One of our fond memories of when we first moved to Raleigh, I'm pretty sure it was 2004. We went to the UNC Miami game in Keenan Stadium. And I think it was Connor Barth who went on to be a kicker in the pros, kicked a winning field goal to win the game. And the students stormed the field. They tore down the goalposts, and this was our first exposure to college football. And we're like, this is awesome.
Yeah, that ruined my childhood. It was great. Thank you for reminding me.
The only time UNC has probably beat Miami in recent years. I don't know.
1,000 paper cuts. No, I didn't go to the game, but really wanted to. It's always fun seeing ACC, the different types of rivalries. I think a little bit more of football and baseball, because of where I grew up in kind of that Latin American culture in the Caribbean. But it's fun to see basketball up here as well. But spent that time in Miami, moved up here actually to go to Duke Divinity School, which was fun. I'm an engineer by training, and so did engineering at Miami, but always was really interested in what made people tick. And in the American South, I prefer to call it the Sun Belt in some ways. Now, a lot of that is driven by people's understanding of spiritual things. And a lot of the power structures are still connected to this, sense of religiosity. And so for me, that was really interesting. And I was always very curious about what made people tick. And so I was starting to, develop my own sense of faith and identity in that type of way. So it's really, really an honor to be at Duke Divinity School and to do my master's degree there. And in a lot of ways, it's informed the work that I do today. So,
And 2009, you said?
2009 is when I moved up, and then was at Duke until 2012.
Did you live in the Raleigh area or out in Durham?
I was in Durham for 3 years. So I really fell in love with the Triangle via Durham initially. And so we've checked all the boxes, I think, officially now for the Triangle. With Chapel Hill, you mentioned. Obviously, this is Raleigh podcast, and then my time in Durham. But that's really where I fell in love with the Triangle, was a lot of the connections over there. This was a different era of city that you two saw. We talked a little bit about your story here. And, Durham was going through a lot of crisis with some of the lacrosse scandals at Duke at the time. And just trying to kind of reimagine what a growing city looks like in a region like ours that has continued to take off. And
Yeah.
that also has inspired me to participate in this type of city building, community engagement work, because we have an opportunity to not just be a city that helps define our region, but really, I think, to be a global and world-class city and region that, I posted on LinkedIn a few days ago. Instead of just looking to Austin and wringing our hands, like I think some of my group of friends, it's like we're always number 2 and number 1 is always Austin. What if we look to some of the global cities that we admire because of the way in which they engage communities and how they build the business and social fabric of their cities? What if we look to them versus looking to some of our comparable metros in the U.S.? What if that's the opportunity that's in front of us?
Yeah.
And so jumping into Innovate Raleigh was a measure of, jumping into that conversation in a lot of ways. And so
I love that. We were just chatting with Adrian Cole, the CEO of Chamber of Commerce Raleigh, and we were talking about something very similar about the importance of collaboration in making this city grow into holding its own unique character. And she really spoke about, and you sort of brought it up a little bit here, about how in this triangle region, there's not a lot of, although on paper we have county lines and all of that, but because of RTP and lots of other things in this area, it's kind of brought all of these communities to come together and collaborate and I guess foster or grow that global kind of city viewpoint that you're talking about.
Yeah, I think we can always do better. We've laid the groundwork. That we is not me. That's a collective we. There's been a lot of people whose names we don't share anymore. Who have laid down that framework and that roadmap for us to really, take up this incredible opportunity and to showcase all of the great things we have going on. My mantra has always been, we can do a ton of good and then figure out how to do well as a result. And so really taking that impact posture and trying to showcase that spirit of collaboration that I think really defines the triangle, but there's still a lot of silos. I don't want it to all just be sunshine and roses either.
No.
I think we have a lot of great things going for us, but we've got to do a better job of connecting to one another, to telling those stories and to working towards that kind of holistic picture of collaboration across just the 3 nodes of the triangle. I like that language. I like regionalism, but there's still a lot of work to be done. And so we've got to press into that.
Yeah, one thing Adrian mentioned that I forget is that RTP straddles both Durham County and Wake County. So bringing those 2 communities together in that way.
Yeah.
But before we get onto the summit and Innovate Raleigh, what else did you do in between that? I believe you with the loading dock. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Tell us a bit about that and your role there. And
it was phenomenal. I had such a great experience. Again, in that spirit of trying to figure out how to do as much good as possible and then to do well. Build a career out of doing as much good as possible in and around our community. I was fortunate to go from actually serving on church staff, something I really didn't imagine I would do, especially here in the Triangle. I'm so fortunate for my time having done that to really understand how social impact can work and perhaps ought to work a little bit better from that type of lens. And then to jump into an incredible company. This is August of 2017. The loading dock at Dock 1053. We had one location. This place that Raleigh founded, formerly HQ, and the American Underground were the places that I had in my imagination for co-working and collaborative spaces. And so trying to riff on that a little bit and really create space for more entrepreneurs who are not just tech entrepreneurs and tech focused was how I tried to help build that company over the course of the 4 years I was there. And it was an incredible opportunity. It was just really great.
Yeah, just for listeners who are not familiar, what is the loading dock exactly?
It's a co-working collaborative space. And so did a lot of community engagement work, a lot of community building work, a lot of economic development work that really brought, people who might have said co-working wasn't for me or the type of company I'm building. We tried to bring those people together to share resources and to really build that business and social fabric. So we had a co-warehousing space that's still thriving. So folks that had storage needs, had kitting, fulfilling, shipping, receiving type of needs.
Okay,
all in line with a beautiful, elegant co-working space like this. But what happens if, you don't just have your laptop, but you have a lot of other things and widgets that you're selling and marketing? There was space for that as well on the same campus.
Oh, which is where the name Loading Dock obviously comes from and connects to.
Yeah, what happens if you outgrow your garage, your living room, your basement?
As we all do.
Yeah, or your spouse says, hey, we'd like to eat dinner on this table tonight.
Yes.
Right, those kinds of things.
Particularly last year, everyone's dining area became their home office.
Right, so that same spirit of flexibility, flexible terms, flexible sizes for people to grow and incubate ideas in a space that was friendly and helpful to entrepreneurs. We just kind of ripped that same page out of a co-working book and said, what if warehousing also had that same spirit?
Yeah.
It really helped a lot of interesting companies to grow just outside of downtown Raleigh proper.
Yeah.
And so we built it out of that type of spirit, and obviously have done, they've done well since I've been there. It wasn't just me.
Yeah.
And they continue to grow and connect all across Wake County.
Yeah. Who were some of the entrepreneurs you were exposed to that had an impact on you?
Oh man, so many. Our CEO and founder also was the CEO and founder of Murphy's Naturals. That's Philip Freeman, great friend of mine, someone who's inspired me to really think about triple bottom line business. Why shouldn't we leverage profit, in the business world to profit our community? Some of these things that we kind of teased out and thought about, and what does that look like? That's nice to say. That's a great soundbite, but what does that look like day in and day out, week in and week out? How do you create the kind of team structure that really is exciting for a lot of different people? Triangle, we talk a lot about talent. What if that looks a little bit differently in the future? People like Tony Spencer, who are building companies with CBD out of our warehouse. Something you don't necessarily think of, but just growing spruce naturals. From a small little shop at Dock 1053. There's so many people in my mind who inspired me. Someone like Conan Morgan at Longleaf Agency, an entrepreneur in his own right, but doing a lot of political advocacy work on behalf of campaigns that all of us get excited about in the political sphere. Very entrepreneurial in a lot of different ways, but not someone who would have necessarily checked the traditional co-working box. But these were my conversation partners, and I was just always curious about what made them tick, kind of going back to my initial storyline with
Divinity
School. And so I just always asked them a ton of questions, and I am a product in a lot of ways of this incredible ecosystem because of the friends that I've had along the way. And it inspires me every day. I feel so grateful to have met so many people. I mentioned 3 men. There's a number of different people along the way. They're not just men who have inspired me as well. Angela Holloway. I mean, just so many incredible folks who have been conversation partners. Dr. Margaret Brunson in Durham, who have just built these different things that are not always the front page of the press, but are doing incredible work on behalf of our neighbors, our friends, our colleagues in this community. And it makes me proud. When you say I'm the interim executive director of Innovate Raleigh, I have that balcony of friends in my mind who, I want to champion the things that they're proud of and tell the story about the triangle that makes them proud to be here and to root their businesses here.
And is that what I kind of inspired you or motivated you to then pursue that entrepreneurial life yourself, where
Certainly.
you are now the interim director at Innovate?
Yeah, I left a great gig at the loading dock at the end of last year, not to diminish the public health crisis by any means, but for me, it raised a lot of questions of, if you have these ideas, especially in a place like the Triangle, you can only keep them on the back burner for so long. And so in December of 2020, I decided to leave a really great gig as the director of community at Loading Dock. We hired up a great team that has done really, really well. And I've pursued a few different ideas that I had in a filing cabinet in my mind somewhere over the last 11 months, and was fortunate when Bridget Harrington, the former executive director of Innovate Raleigh, said, I think you should do this as the interim. And I said, I don't think that's really what I had in my plans, to go back into not-for-profit world. I was going to work for myself and kind of figure out how to do that there. And she said, just shut up and do it. And I said, yes, ma'am. Yes, I did. When Bridget Harrington says that to you, hopefully she's listening. When she says that, you say, yes, ma'am, I will fall in line and do that. And so I've been fortunate to rub elbows now with Adrian Cole and Michael Haley and Danya Perry and Kathleen Henry and all of these incredible folks who are doing incredible work. and names that aren't always, again, on headlines, but
Sure.
people who day in and day out show up on behalf of our community.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been great.
Yeah.
And what is your role then at Innovate?
Yeah, a lot of my role, I jumped in at the beginning of August, so
Yeah.
it has been a sprint.
Yeah.
Prior to the pandemic, I felt like I was a person who always had that clutch. I could go
Yeah.
to the sixth gear quickly. With two small kids at home, it's been harder to find the clutch and that pedal in my
I like
life.
that description.
But yeah, it's like now I'm like punching the bottom, like where's the
Where's the
clutch
gap?
to get to the sixth
there you
gear.
go.
But
There you go.
they asked me really to bring together an interesting mix of people,
Mm-hmm.
content, collaborators at this Innovate Raleigh Summit. It's our 10th anniversary. The theme of the summit is then, now, next. And so we want to do a good job, especially after the pandemic. A lot of us have been isolated in different ways over the last few years, at least 18 months. What does it look like to tell a story of where we were 10 years ago, to really celebrate where we are now? Because I'm the kind of person who's always looking to the next thing, and I forget that
yes.
we need to mark time well. So to say we've come a long way in 10 years, and so that's that now piece, but also to not just rest in some of the laurels that we've had, of the lists and all those things that some of us pick up and share and all that. That's great. But that took a lot of work to get to that point. Not all those things, in my opinion, are great things that we ought to be proud of. Some of these number 2s and number 3 things, a lot of our friends in our community do not share in the impact of those number 2 housing market type things, because they might be displaced or their taxes have gone up. So I think we need to fill out that picture of what does the next for a region look like. I think we have a good idea, but we really need to band together. Coming back to your question about collaboration and what Adrian spoke about, it takes all of us pressing in, working together, building the kind of relational equity that makes this place special to really chart that course into the future. So we're teasing that out. What does that look like? And we've asked a few of our friends, not everybody who has always been on the main stage, to share their perspective of, what the future looks like here in our region. And so I'm really excited, that it's right around the corner.
Yeah.
Sounds great. So when was Innovate Raleigh established? And for those listening and just hearing of it for the first time, is it just an annual conference event thing, or is it more than that? And
It's a great question.
How do people get involved?
So established 10 years ago, our co-founders are Dr. Terry Lomax, formerly at NC State, and our current mayor, Marianne Baldwin. They saw an opportunity to bring together a really grassroots group of people who were highly engaged in the entrepreneur ecosystem. And again, 10 years ago, there weren't all the kind of entrepreneurial support organizations and the kind of connective tissue that looks like it just magic overnight appeared. It took a lot of hard work, not just from the 2 co-founders, but from a cohort of people who said, we are going to work together to make this thing incredible. And so over the years, Innovate Raleigh has tried to chart that course mostly via the Innovate Raleigh Annual Summit. However, there have been a lot of interesting partnerships and programs that have happened over time. Right now, we have the Triangle Entrepreneurial Support Organizations that meet most months, semi-monthly, together to really look at the resources that we have to offer to entrepreneurs at different stages. That came out of a partnership and a relationship between a lot of not-for-profits and folks who just were wondering, curious about, hey, what is the Center for Entrepreneurial Development doing? What is NC IDEA doing? What are the different co-working spaces doing? How can we not just reinvent the wheel, but how can we really do things that are going to be helpful for people? And so I think in a lot of people's minds, the summit has been the thing. We're trying to move away from that. The summit will always kind of have a certain center of gravity for Innovate Raleigh, but there's a lot of other things we need to do, especially post-pandemic, as we figure out how to create the kind of resiliency and a robust community, both from a social side and a business side in our community. We need to figure out what that looks like. It's probably more meetups. It's a lot more connected. It's people feeling comfortable outside, appropriately distanced over time to just, again, kind of ease back into this new normal. We're not going to go back. I'm old enough, you two are as well, to remember, getting a wand waved over you and walking to the gate to receive somebody at the airport. For me, it was Miami International Airport. We would go and, my mom's family was in California. They would fly from LAX to Miami and we'd meet them at the gate.
Yes.
Yeah.
We will never do that again, right?
Never.
TSA is not just going to wave the magic wand and we're not going to take our shoes off and do all the things. It's that type of posture for me that really drives the conversation. We've got to get creative. We've got to band together, and we need people to participate. So if there's one thing that's a takeaway for me of this summit and really the things moving forward, it's we need everybody to speak into this.
Yeah.
Grassroots, organized, corporations, small businesses, early stage companies. We need everybody to speak into it and to make it better with that spirit of refining what it looks like to be a great community.
Yeah, I love that. And, it's all about the intentionality this community is to live to that higher ideal and to make it great. And I guess we're at the perfect time because, it's growing, but it's not a city like Miami or New York where it's just too big and too hard to control. It's still that small town community there where those voices can be heard and can be included in the conversation and come up with those solutions that we need together.
I think we need the kind of infrastructure that allows that type of culture, that sense of connectivity to grow, and we can foster that. But it takes this opportunity right now over the next 2 to 3 years before things get too big and the snowball is rolling so far and so quickly down the hill.
Yeah,
we need to do that. We need to band together and create those kind of inroads. I think Innovate Raleigh plays a particular type of role to really be that front door of the ecosystem, the entrepreneurial ecosystem. So convening conversations, catalyzing those conversations, bringing people together, and really getting back to that spirit of and groundswell of activity, spirit of collaboration, that groundswell of activity to where someone, could create the kind of access that leads to an opportunity that allows one of our neighbors and friends to participate fully as themselves in our community. That's the magic, right? That we would create space for as many people as possible. I would like to say all, but I know that's a bit idealistic. For as many people as possible to chase the dreams that they have and create the kinds of companies, even if they're not unicorns, right? We need that interesting mix of companies. And a lot of other regions, especially of our size, don't have that interesting mix.
Yeah,
they
that's
have
a good
all
point.
tiny companies, which is fine, or they kiss the ring and they recruit all the big corporations. We have the opportunity to do both. And I think that also is what's special about Raleigh and the Triangle. So.
Yeah, I like that. I was just going to ask you, like, as we chatted to Adrian, like Raleigh makes a lot of lists. Like, they seem like they're on every list, whether it's places to live with families, places to go to school, for young couples. Obviously, from Innovate Raleigh's perspective, and the business side of things, and being an entrepreneur, whether if someone's looking to move here and start a business, or a local looking to leave their job and become an entrepreneur, what are some of the things that makes Raleigh a great place for you to be an entrepreneur or build a business?
I really think it's the approachability. I mean, we've harped on that in a couple of different ways, but I think it's the approachability. I've heard, especially in this role as the interim executive director of Innovate, that people have this different sense of they've moved here, even sometimes during the pandemic, which is tricky already.
People,
Tough, man.
To have moved here and then to have heard all these great things and then feel like that has kind of shut down on you. I know we're trying to figure out how to do that and re-engage. There's a lot of interesting people around our community doing that work. But folks have moved here and they've said there is this different type of sense of what happens in our community. Someone's willing to send that email introduction. A business leader responds to an email that's just a cold call type of email out there. We have that in our community. That's special, and not everybody, and not every region has that. A lot of those emails go unread. No one sends that email introduction. And that happens in a lot of different industries with a lot of different people all across our region. That's interesting and special. And that approachability is what I want to see more of as this region grows and gets more, more play in the national imagination. I think sometimes here, people see capital city, they see tech, and then they see North Carolina. For me, there's a sense of pride that we've been able to do different things in the American South and to showcase the full spectrum of our community. But for some people, they see us down here still being a bit backwards and, imagine a different type of capital city than when they actually come here and they see it and they feel it and they experience it. They go to the breweries, they go to the parks. I mean, what an incredible place with so many open green spaces.
Oh,
I have
yeah.
2 small kids, like I mentioned,
absolutely.
to just go run
Yes.
in our urban core.
Yeah.
That's unique and that's special.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
all those types of things.
We've experienced the same
Yeah.
thing. Like we had no idea what to expect when we first moved here.
Right.
Like you said, a capital city and what have you. We'd never heard of Raleigh, but yeah, instantly got under our skin.
Right.
Like for all those reasons, like the greenways and the lakes. Like we grew up by the beach and we missed the ocean. But
too.
we've
I
come,
still do.
We've come to be, yeah, absolutely.
I still do.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
We were just at the beach last week and watching the sunrise and just jumping in the ocean is just an amazing way to start the day.
Right.
But it's just 2 hours away, so it's not out of reach. But we've come to love lake life and stuff like that. And, you know, like being the city of oaks, you know, even though Raleigh is growing quickly, like still in the tree-lined streets and the greenery and stuff still gives it that smaller town feel and more relaxing experience like with nature and stuff like that. And Umstead just up the road and like awesome place to access.
I haven't flown much lately. I don't know if you two
No.
have.
I
I flew one time during the pandemic, and you still fly in on a clear day into RDU.
in the forest, into the
International
middle
Airport,
of a forest.
and the city emerges from the forest.
Yes, it does.
I know.
It's just such an incredible picture. I think
Grows out
until
of
you
it.
see that, sometimes you'll see the cityscape.
Yes.
So you think, oh, okay, this is a lot more dense than it really is.
Yeah.
Sometimes I see other cityscapes and I'm like, Raleigh really isn't that dense and
Yeah.
it feels still pretty small town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when you fly in and you see the green space to scale from an airplane,
Yeah.
it's unreal. And it just really, I think, tells that story
Yeah, no, I love it.
of the city emerging from the
Yeah,
forest.
and then just
Yeah,
the
love
pine
that.
tree wooded neighborhoods and everything like that. And
Do you say we're far from the coast? I have to ask you as a fellow coastal person.
yes and no.
Yeah?
Like as Australians, like we used to driving a lot.
Okay.
Like, we've driven big distance, plus we've done big road trips
Right.
like for a year long around the US and RV. So driving like 2 hours is nothing to me.
Okay.
But I understand for other perspective, you know,
Right.
depending where you come from and what have you. But
My wife tells people that we live close to the beach.
Yeah.
She's from Cincinnati, so
I was
that's fair.
just
she's
about
from
to
Cincinnati.
say that depends
Yeah.
where you're
Like,
from.
For me,
Yeah.
it's this is about as far
Miami,
inland as I would
like,
like to
probably,
be.
I
Yeah.
don't know if you could bike to the beach growing up or
But you'd be a little scared of the cars. But yeah,
Yeah.
we could. Like we grew up 1 hour north of Sydney. We could
Yeah.
ride a bike and probably we could walk as well. Like it's a decent walk, but we could walk.
Yeah.
So,
we weren't that close. I didn't grow up
yeah.
that close to the beach.
Yeah.
But close enough.
Yeah.
Striking distance.
Yeah.
Depending on traffic. So I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No, you're fine. I was going to say, yeah, just depend because for most Australians, 2/3 of the population live on the coast.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
you
You're
know,
used to it.
yeah, we'd say Raleigh is far. But if I'm looking at from a whole American perspective, where most people like live away from the coast, then, you know, it is pretty close to the beach. So,
A lot of plug to my friends in Wilmington who might be listening to
Yes.
this and say, why didn't you mention us? I love you, Wilmington friends. You're great.
Yeah.
I do miss going to Wilmington because I miss the beach.
we love Wrightsville.
We
We
love-
go to
There you go.
Wrightsville all
Yeah,
the time.
I know.
It's probably like it reminds us of home actually, like
Yeah.
that Aussie beach culture.
it.
And we love you got the ocean on one side and then the sound on the other. It's
I love it.
just magic.
I think we just got this podcast sponsored by the
Yes.
city of Wilmington.
There you go.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's
Wilmington
great.
and
Thank you,
beaches.
Wilmington.
Wilmington and beaches. There you go. Happy to chat about Wrightsville and Wilmington.
That's so great.
Yeah.
and so your perspective, because you did grow up in Miami,
Yeah.
and so you've lived in that
Mhm.
big city, highly international city, and now you're here and you're at this place now where you're looking at how we make Raleigh grow,
Mhm.
but still maintain its character. So from that perspective, what do you feel are some things that we could look to Miami to maybe
Yeah.
grow and improve in certain areas? What do you think that is the most kind of the challenging parts of Raleigh, or the things that really need most work to
Yeah.
grow and develop?
I think it's a great question. I mean, I look to Miami. They've invested more in transit
Yeah,
over
I think
time
that
from
is
when
the
I was a
Raleigh
kid growing up in
problem.
the 80s and
Yeah.
90s in Miami.
Yeah, it seems to be a
Um,
common thing people wish was better here. But
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think that's an opportunity we have. Miami is not a great place for housing. You know, we bought our house in East and Southeast Raleigh in 2013. It might have been early 14 on South State Street in State Street Village. And love that house, a 1,300 square foot house, old shotgun. It was just such a great place for the beginnings of our family. That wouldn't have been possible in a place like Miami unless we lived, you know, an hour and a half out commute wise, just via car.
Wow.
You know, so I joke a lot of times here with my friends who grew up in the Triangle that until we get to the place where it is 8 lanes on one side of the freeway
Oh my God,
with
no.
350,000 of your best friends sitting, we don't have the kinds of traffic problems that other major metros have.
I just felt nauseous you saying that.
I-95 with 350,000 of your best
Yeah,
friends basically in a parking lot is a very interesting experience. You plan your day around traffic.
Yeah.
Now we could do better here, but we have an opportunity to get ahead of it. So we need the kind of commuter rail as well that's going to make our city interesting and well connected all across the triangle. I think the triangle really becomes a thing when transit connects it strategically. There's no reason that I shouldn't be able to get to Durham, each morning via train quickly and come back quickly at a time that's within reason so I could be home for dinner with my family. Something
So
we
true.
need.
Yeah,
we
it's
do.
been like the
We
light
do.
rail's been spoken about probably ever since we first moved here. I don't
Sure.
know where it's at right now, the conversation, but connecting Durham or maybe Chapel Hill, the universities, and then RDU, and downtown Raleigh, et cetera, and then branching off. Whatever,
We have the Greenway System. It's an incredible asset that a lot of our friends have invested in over time. It's been something the city has committed to. So bike, pedestrian, not just for fitness, but also for commuting.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of times I think people default to fitness or to, riding bike leisurely. I mean, I would like to be in a place, and for my kids to grow up in a place where we use the greenways as access points also to get from point A to point B. Yeah. I've used the southern corridor from State Street Village near the Wetland Center in Southeast Raleigh all the way over to Dix Park.
We took that one recently.
Yeah,
It's
super fun.
beautiful.
I was just going to
incredible.
say, we lived on Lake Johnson area for the first 4 years we lived here. And the Greenway is amazing. We recently biked from Lake Johnson to downtown on the Greenway.
Right.
And we're like, this is amazing.
Right. Will we ever be a car-free city? I don't think so.
No.
And that's okay, but maybe we change the way we organize where we store our cars, parking. I don't want this to be a 3.5 hour long podcast, so we won't talk too much about parking. But, I think there are creative ways, right? Creative, innovative ways.
Speaking of Wrightsville, they have a parking situation, especially on a Sunday in the middle of summer.
Oh my gosh, I know.
Yeah, but anyway.
But again, it's all about us working with the assets we have, looking to other cities in and around the country for tips, asking questions. I think that spirit of collaboration that's happening Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill, what if we pressed in with some of the other people who we might look to as competitors from an economic development perspective? What if we tried to chart a different type of future by learning from each other?
Yeah, collaboration.
Miami's a great
again.
example.
Yeah.
You get to 8 lanes of highway on one side of the road heading north or south, and you wonder, should we really add any more lanes?
Yeah.
Right?
Is there
Is
another
there another
point?
way?
Do we have
Yeah,
another
at what
solution
point do
here?
we? Yeah,
Where do we
so-
stop?
Yeah, and I'm not an anti-car person, but I do think we can do things
better.
differently and do better with how we use transit. So for me, that's an equalizer. It creates the kind of opportunity and access and approachability that I want to see more of in our community. And I think one of the other things that gets me excited is, we need to have some more incremental density. We need to have the kind of mixed-use developments, especially along the transit corridors. Light rail might be years off, but we've got a bus rapid transit program that is coming. The city is making investments. I live on New Run Avenue, and so it's literally in our front yard. We'll see that rapid transit come through, and it's important to us to live on New Bern Avenue because we were going to see the rapid transit come in on the east side of town. It's such an equalizer. As much as sometimes I bemoan the scooters because they're all over creation, it's an equalizer. It is that last mile of transit that we need, especially in the urban core, to get people from one place to another for work, for play, for enjoying our city. It again fills in that picture of what is the next in our community. And I think these are some of the things we'll tease out at the Innovate Raleigh Summit next week.
So for the Innovate Raleigh Summit, you'll have speakers who will come and talk on these issues, and then do you think tank together, or it's just a matter of listening to the different ideas that are out there and people are sharing?
Yeah, that's a great question too. In terms of format this year, it's just an afternoon. Again, we're trying to kind of ease back into being together. We're at the convention center. We're downtown. We'll be masked. We'll be inside for part of the occasion. There'll be a main stage speaker. That's Johnny Hackett Jr. With the Black Dollar Corp.
Yeah, great
Another
story.
incredible person in and around our community. I'm super excited about the story he's going to share for that keynote. We'll break out into 3 different sessions. People have a choice. In the past, we've mixed and matched. So you could go to session 1, then jump over to session 2 at some point. We're not going to do that just to make things a little bit more streamlined. Obviously, in this era of COVID, with cases diminishing, we still want to be careful. So you'll pick one of the 3 breakout sessions. Those are the traditional ideation session, as you had mentioned, kind of a brainstorming, looking at 6 challenges, housing, transit being 2 of those. What does it look like to really get that kind of groundswell perspective from people who are engaged citizens, who are small business leaders, who are entrepreneurs, and have them chart that course and tell that story, and then really work towards an action plan. I think one of the knocks, and I think this is right, but I want to go on the record for this. Innovate Raleigh has brought together a lot of incredible people and a lot of great ideas, but we haven't always followed through. And I think that's something that we have an opportunity to do better in the future as an entity, as an organization. We can do better. We can take those ideas and the spaghetti that's been thrown and take the things that have stuck on the wall and take them with us and then chart a course over the next year with different programs and opportunities for people to engage and shape the future. Second session is going to be connecting startups and early stage companies to the greater business community, kind of coming back to what we talked about before. Are we going to be all grassroots? Are we going to be all corporate? Or are we going to do something interesting somewhere in the middle? And so we'll talk about green tech and accountability from, what does it look like for companies to have a positive effect maybe from a climate change perspective? What does it look like for startups and early stage companies that are doing a lot of diversity, equity, inclusion work to become established companies and then to press the business community to do better? We'll be teasing some of those things out along with conversations about growing tech. As well as you might expect at Innovate Raleigh. And the last thing is the future of funding. It's our last breakout session. What does it look like to leverage not just community impact, but perhaps community capital? What if we don't have to always, bemoan that there's not as much venture capital money here in the Triangle and look to Silicon Valley and Austin and some of those places that just have more? What if we banded together and you had some and I had some and you had some, and collectively that made a big number? So crowdfunding, early stage capital raises. A lot of people aren't raising $500 million. They're looking to raise $500,000. How do we press in as a community and do that and tell that story so that when people have an exit or there's a return, we're all participating in that growth, just like the bigger companies might in the future. And so tease that out. And the last session will be closed out by Mitchell Silver, just coming back from New York City, a principal at McAdams. And he was one of the first keynote speakers at the original Innovate Raleigh Summit. Great. And so he'll have a really great perspective on where we were, we are, and then where we ought to be, especially coming back from New York City. And so we're excited to have Mitch as our closer for that session. There'll be a party to follow, which will be great because a lot of us haven't seen each other for a while. Some space outside to socialize for those who might be comfortable outside and not inside, with drinking and eating. And then we'll hopefully, continue to see those conversations come to fruition after the summit and tease those out with the partnership with Airfluence. And so I want to make sure, I say thank you to Jason and the team as well, because they're going to help us to continue to tell those stories so that it's not just at one event, but those stories are teased out throughout the course of the year. Yeah.
So there's going to be a podcast component at the summit, I believe.
There will be.
How is that going to play out?
So
opportunities. What are you looking to do with that?
Yeah. So interviews with speakers, to hear some of the questions that might not have shared in the keynotes and follow-ups, things like that. But also opportunities to hear from engaged citizens, people who have showed up, who might be interested in pursuing their dream in the entrepreneur ecosystem. What does that look like? What do they need? What conversations are they hearing? We want to hear all of that type of activity so we can, again, try to fill in those gaps along the way with our partners like Raleigh Founded, and American Underground, and Loading Dock, and VentureX, and a lot of great partners at the Innovate Raleigh Summit to really fill in that picture and say, these are the things where we have the gaps in our ecosystem, and then to, figure out a way to bring all that together so that people have that access and opportunity to participate.
So will the podcast component, will it be like live streamed at all, or will it be like recorded and then
it's going to be recorded and shared
later?
After.
I was going to say, like, for people, how do you get tickets and what type of ticket can you get? Is it just purely attendance, or is there a virtual component to it at all?
It's a great question. Right now it's all in person. And so we had to make a decision on that. And we decided not to have a virtual component alongside of the in-person component. So we'll be sharing content afterwards in different types of consumable ways, but there won't be a live stream for the actual event. The podcast, in partnership with Airfluence, will be one of those components that continues to tease out some of the storylines and threads.
Yeah,
from
and just
the
magnify
summit. Yep.
Those conversations.
Keep that
later.
energy going.
Yeah, nice. Awesome.
Yep.
And the summit is it most suited to a particular type of person, like a startup or?
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, it probably has hedged a bit towards high tech, but we want people with ideas. I mean, for me, innovation is more than just tech, although in our community, it's very heavy tech, and that's a great thing. That's an asset that we have at our disposal in our community is to have such great life science technologies and also just proper, developers and people like Todd Olson at Pendo, growing companies from a small seed to, a unicorn now.
Yeah, well, they just took over Red Hat recently. I drove past them
Pandemonium,
like, what's going on here? Is there a concert or something?
I know. My wife would kill me if I plug Pendo too much. She's the director of communications for Pendo. So, Laura, I love you. And this is not contingent on Pendo sponsoring the podcast or anything. But no, it was great. It was great to see just her cohort of friends do that to showcase our incredible city at an awesome venue like Red Hat Amphitheater.
It is such a great
right in the heart
venue.
of downtown, outside. Again, trying to do as best a job as possible to get people together. Some people feel comfortable virtually, full stop. But I think there's a lot of us who are just trying to, again, ease back in, do the right thing, ensure that our neighbors and friends are, not at any higher risk than, going outside, you're at a particular risk. And I think all of us know that. But trying to keep the appropriate distance in and trying to meet outside. The weather's nice right now.
Yeah.
Crisp mornings, great afternoons. Let's try to meet outside. Let's get back together. Let's share those ideas. Let's create the future together right now. And so we felt like the in-person event was where we wanted to head. But I hope people will engage if they're not able to attend for whatever reason with us along the way on social or via the podcast series, which would be great.
Yeah, we'll do our best to share the love and get this podcast out there.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
and hopefully we can see about attending ourselves. Sounds fantastic.
Yeah, it really does.
The word pivot has been mentioned a gazillion times for the last, 12, 18 months.
Sure.
What has been your best pivot as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think I have like a visceral reaction to that word at this point. I'm like,
I just saw you breaking out in
I immediately have like a dry heave type. So if you've caught that on the audio, I apologize for that.
Sorry.
You can watch the video.
What's another
you
word?
can watch
What's
the video
another?
and see it.
For me,
Sidestep or something.
I'm an engineer by training, so I'm going to use the language of a point of inflection.
Okay,
for all of those geeks on the podcast. But yeah, I think my best pivot personally was to remind myself that family is the thing that drives me. I think in a lot of ways, my wife's going to listen to this and she's going to laugh just because she sees all the crazy. But, just remembering that our community, our families are the most important thing. I think for me, that was something that I was trying in my early 30s to continue to grow so much professionally that I had forgotten to a certain extent. And so I want to say that too, for those folks who listen to the podcast. Our community, our friends, our family are most important. And I hope that to a certain extent, each of us is able to pause and reflect on that coming out of the last 18 months and remember our why. To use some of that buzzword type language is remember that and to really then make the appropriate steps and to adjust our lifestyle so that those kind of internal things that drive us are reflected in our external way that we engage with our community. And so for me, it was really leaving the safety of my W-2 job to pursue some of these entrepreneurial ventures that I've started over the last 18 months that really at a high level are looking to find this intersection of community engagement, community development, and economic development. Some of that work definitely is a part of how I think about Innovate Raleigh, but also in my self-employed life, working on different contracts with a lot of really cool people across our state and our region. I feel so fortunate, and that was a point of inflection for me to say, if not now, when will I, grab that interesting idea out of the drawer and really try to put it into practice. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But that's been a point for me that has, been a marker. I think I'll look back to 2020 and say, gosh, remember when, things were all just about work. And, it's kind of like that big moment. For me, it was 9/11 as a millennial. It was like, oh my gosh, the country is never going to be the same. We're all going to rally together. Now 20 years out, it's like, what happened?
Yeah.
What happened? How did we get this far away from each other?
Yeah.
How can we not compromise on things. Your kids go to school, my kids go to school. We need to figure out education.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, it's kind of remembering those core components. And, that point of inflection is hopefully to the good, to do as much good as we possibly can day in and day out on behalf of our friends. And that doesn't mean you're just running a not-for-profit. That means you can run the kinds of companies that we're all proud of, that are rooted here in Raleigh in the Triangle, and that all of us look to and tell stories about because of the way in which they give back, the way in which they engage, the way in which they showcase all of the incredible things we have to offer. And, you two do that here based on this podcast to showcase the stories, the friends, the people, the colleagues who are, just showing up, being present mentally and in person, and also being mentally present to just shape the future. And that's my word for people over the next 2 to 3 years. If you're listening to this, is we have an opportunity. It's in front of us, but we have to take that opportunity and really carve out the future with the right infrastructure and have a compelling roadmap so that this is an inclusive community. That ball is rolling down the hill quickly. We can change that now, and we can build something that each of us is proud of.
Yeah.
And so my hope is that people who leave the Innovate Raleigh Summit also come away with that sense of energy, that sense of optimism, but also that sense that we can do better and we ought to.
Yeah. And that we can do it with a community who is feeling the same drive to do something better. Because I think often, you have your ideals and you want to do something to change the world and make it better. But sometimes you do feel like it's too big for you to handle on your own, and you're too isolated and alone and not knowing how to do that. So to have that community, which I feel so strongly in Raleigh, that people are really committed to make it a better place.
Yeah.
That you don't have to do it alone and you can join with other people and make your ideas even that much better.
We've given a lot of lip service to that over the years. And I think it's time for us to take those words and to really create an action plan. I think we're ready for it.
Yes.
I think it's going to take clear and compelling leadership to really create that future, but we can do it. We have the thing that's most important, which is the people who are bought into that mission and that mindset. It's just going to take that coalition building to bring it to fruition. And I think we're going to do it.
Yeah.
I think we're committed to it. I think there's enough friends who are going to just press in that direction.
Yeah, love it. That was a great answer. Thank you for sharing all that. Very, very thoughtful.
Yeah.
Moving forward, I believe one of your focuses is on activating underutilized
You've done your research here. Yeah.
Property.
Come on.
Like churches, for example.
Yes.
Correct?
This is true.
Tell us about that.
Oh my gosh, how much time do we have left?
All the time you want.
Oh my gosh,
it's all very interesting.
Now you're baiting me. You've put the hook just gently into the water.
In under 60 seconds.
Another 60 seconds. Oh my gosh. Let's take everybody. Hold on. Sit down.
You've got some time.
Okay. I had an idea a little while ago, again with my background in institutional church. That has a lot of triggering effects for a lot of different people, and that's okay. But a lot of folks are, sharing words that are intended to be good news for our community. For me, it's not very compelling when you own $500 million in underutilized, in my opinion, assets, especially in the urban core. So it's roughly $564 million from the research I've done inside of 440 that local churches of different denominations and flavors own.
Wow.
This is not churches who rent assets. These are churches who own assets. That's about 162 acres of dirt.
Wow.
Inside
the belt line.
Wow.
Not in our county, just in what I would call our urban core.
That
is an astronomical number, $500 million. If we want to create the kind of city that a lot of us want to see, where everybody ought to, by right, have access to an attainable home, an affordable home, then we need to start activating assets that are not utilized well.
I love this.
So there's a few different buckets in my life of how that happens. I won't go into those in too many detail because we have 60 seconds, but it was an idea, just a group of friends, a design strategy and consulting shop called the Steeple Collective that was really trying to bring together, as I looked around, in my mind, there's this picture of the three of us standing at the Capitol with rocks in our hands, right? And we turn and we throw that rock. And the question I had for a lot of people as I developed this idea was, how many steeples do you hit? It's a lot.
A lot.
From the Capitol.
It is.
This is state
I'm just seeing it in my
Capitol.
mind now.
Right. It's the state of North
You got
Carolina.
a decent arm.
Now,
there's a
for
lot.
me, my assumption was, okay, Raleigh is the exception. As I've looked beyond just Raleigh and the Triangle,
Mhm.
I've realized that in the Sun Belt, the American South, Raleigh's in fact the rule, not the exception. So if we want to start incrementally building the kinds of cities that I think a lot of us want to see on behalf of our neighbors, friends, especially those who are at the margins, who are being displaced, right,
Yes.
structurally, systemically, I think we need to go to the organizations that are proclaiming that they're doing a lot of good and want to do more good and encourage them to develop their assets. Because not only do they have assets that are appreciable, they don't pay taxes on those assets. So when we look at $564 million in tax-assessed valued assets, that is not going to the greater good, right? But
Correct.
Right. So, and it might not ever, but that's okay. But if we develop those assets and we started to seed the kind of retail shops, maybe co-retail like Black Friday Market, that we want to see that's interesting, that could continue to bring back that sense of vibrancy from a retail perspective downtown, not just big box, but interesting stores like Deco or like Black Friday or, Raleigh Raw on that corner there. That's just such a great mix. I walk by there all the time.
It
and
is.
I'm so grateful to have, there's a lot of different ones. What if a place at the table had a few different locations because they had the kind of approachable retail space that really could connect, our city in meaningful ways so that people didn't have to just walk to the warehouse district to have a meal that they bought or that they served, in the back of a house for.
Yeah.
I think all of us, when we start to think about this at
the
like a micro level,
opportunities,
at a micro level, everybody's like, why
it's
wouldn't
like-
we do
I
that?
know.
Yeah.
And yet we have a ton of surface parking lots in our downtown
We
that
do.
churches own that have the best by right zoning, in my opinion, to be developed with the community in mind. And so in other way, just to put it a little bit more plainly, because sometimes I can geek out in some of the development speak, if we have quote unquote community-centric assets, like a church or not-for-profit that owns that dirt or that building and dirt, then if that property is to be developed, I would like for it to continue to have the community-centric focus. So perhaps that's partnering with a not-for-profit developer. Maybe it's a long-term land lease, but so that we can start to create the kinds of city, especially with the housing-heavy focus, that, again, all of us want to see. We want to see more and more people participate in that type of way. I think it starts with housing. I think it also starts with transit. But it doesn't take rocket science. It's just a measure of creativity. But not everything can just be gold-plated here. I think we see that. We see new towers going up. And it's not all bad. Investment is not all bad. But displacement, I think, is not the right thing for our city.
Yeah.
None of us are proud of that. And it disproportionately affects Black, Brown, and Indigenous people in our community, especially in East and Southeast Raleigh. I have been a part of the problem. And I want to say that confessionally, to you both and to also your listeners. I'm not trying to wear the white hat or ride on the high horse. But again, this is the first step, I think, in approaching do-good type entities and saying, what if we created, again, a coalition that would develop the asset in such a way that we could provide the kind of affordable, missing middle, and attainable housing that everybody in our community deserves, period.
And have you seen any examples of this in any other cities around the world?
A lot in other cities. There are a few examples. They're not many because a lot of times when these types of assets, if they're historical, sometimes they'd be redone into townhouses. Think of like a brownstone type of feel.
Yeah.
A high-end condo, or to retain just the street front type of look, and then go up with some kind of density.
Oh, yeah.
Oftentimes it goes from community-centric asset, in my opinion, to a very capitalist asset. I just want to retain some of that social fabric.
Yeah.
I think it's plausible. There are examples. There are not a ton of those, but there are a few here in North Carolina. Congregate in Anoda in Charlotte, just north of Charlotte, is one example where they converted an old church asset, I think it was built in the 60s or something like that, to a co-working collaborative space. Interesting. What if that could be a social entrepreneurship hub that, finds this middle ground between folks who have an idea, who are still working their W-2 job, and, places like Raleigh Founded, where you pay a certain amount based on the fact that your company is of a certain size or you have access to a certain level of capital.
Yeah.
What if there was a civic space somewhere in between that really had a social impact focus? Those are some of the threads that I'm trying to tease out with my work in the Steeple Collective. And, I don't want to be a bully and just target the church, but I think the church has a disproportionate, asset portfolio, to use business terms,
Yes.
especially here in the American South. And so why not start there? Again, this isn't, I want this to be somewhat confrontational, but not abrasive, to really raise this issues to clergy, to church leaders, to other folks, even not-for-profits that have assets, and say, what if we could partner with someone who is mission and vision aligned and create the kind of future that you'd like to see, but putting people who are experts in those particular roles, metaphorically in the right seats on that bus, right?
Yeah,
To use
yeah.
Jim Collins' metaphor, and to have the bus, going down the street with those right people in the right seats on that bus. It's not, hey, let's not put all of the burden on the not-for-profit to do that. That's not their lane potentially, but coming alongside of people who have the greater community in mind could be a way to do that well. And it could be mission aligned for them and change the landscape of the next 20 or 25 years for that not-for-profit or that entity. Helpful?
I love it.
So many
Yeah, it's such a
opportunities.
great
That's
idea.
a great vision.
We could have done the whole podcast
That's
on
awesome.
that.
I know.
You teased me at the end here.
I know my mind's going. with
Sorry.
Maybe for
ideas
another
and-
day.
I was
Yeah,
just gonna
I'll
say,
take that hat off and I'll put the other hat on.
Yeah, the churches, absolutely. I mean, like, you could talk about a few of the unique ones in London.
Yeah.
Oh, well, they
sure.
typically involve bars and beer.
Yeah.
But
Well, but I mean, what if that's also a part
in
of
London.
yes.
I know.
But
Yeah.
I mean, that's a part as we look at the capital C universal church. And again, I could be synagogue or mosque as well. I just think because of our particular context in the American South, I think of Protestant evangelical churches. If you have a sign outside of your church that says Black Lives Matter, I think you have now put, your stake in the ground literally that says,
Totally.
we need to think creatively about what that means.
Yeah.
If that's important to you, and that particular assertion is important to you
Don't just put a
insofar
si-
as
don't just
you
put a
put
sign
the
up.
sign and you check that one box,
Yeah.
I think now those are the churches I want to talk to, right? The churches who are saying, we believe this type of thing. We believe that, there have been systems in the past. We've come a long way, but there's still these systems that, allow people who look like me to potentially participate at a different level because of what I look like as a young white man in the American South, in a privileged position like Innovate Raleigh. What if we say, hey, in order to really say that and to practically mean that as a city, we have to develop affordable, missing middle, and attainable housing on this asset.
Yes.
Yeah.
What sayeth thou?
Yeah.
So, I want to have fun
like
with it.
Yeah,
I also want to have a serious conversation.
Yeah.
If that means something to you, let's do something about it.
Yeah.
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 And let's build the city of the future that way.
And it won't
Fantastic.
happen without, I forgot the word you said, confrontation, without poking the bear a little bit, disrupting,
Yeah.
It's not going to happen unless we
Little
have
bit
those
of
tough conversations.
uncomfortable
I'm clergy, so I'm
conversations.
poking
Yeah,
the bear
yeah.
from within side.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like that, inside poke. I've been ordained staff. I've been in that seat. And so to my colleagues and friends who might be listening to this, again, it's about pressing in. It's about taking the creativity that we have in our community and saying, we want to see a different type of future. Living a life of death by 1,000 paper cuts, because we know that I statistically attend church less than my parents did, or synagogue or mosque, whatever. I'm not sure that's true of synagogue and mosque, so I don't want to go on the record for that. But I know for evangelical Christian communities, that's true.
We're not going
Yeah.
live around
That's great.
the world. Just right
Yes,
now.
but statistically, as a millennial, I am less religious, at least institutionally, than my parents were.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a good, sustainable business model
Yes,
for churches.
this is
And
true.
They have to keep the lights on. They have staff.
Mhm.
Again, this is a way to operate proactively versus reactively. That's the confrontation. It's proactive versus reactive. You can die a death by 1,000 paper cuts, or
Involved.
you can evolve and change the future. And perhaps that's the best news your community has heard, your neighbors have heard in a long time from you. That's the thesis.
Develops a deeper faith, really, isn't it?
In our community.
Yeah.
People can tease that out however they want to tease that out.
Yeah.
I know what it looks like for me, and for some people I know well, but I think it's also evolving. I don't have the same faith that I did 10 years ago when I went to seminary. And I think that's human, right? I think we evolve. I think we grow. I think we learn. I think we ask questions. I think we're curious. I think we're exposed to different things. And I think that's encouraging. I think for some people that can be debilitating. For me, that's encouraging that these things aren't just static, but these are things that we can tease out and work together on. So yeah. But Steeple Collective, it's fun. It's a work in progress, but I think it is an idea that's worth, putting a lot of people around and figuring out how we can accomplish some of these things on behalf of our community.
Yeah, I love it. So many great minds and innovative thinkers in the community.
Sure.
It's a great way to start moving things in a positive, better way.
Hope so.
I love it.
Totally. Awesome. All right, let's pivot quickly away from the business entrepreneur type of stuff and just a few questions about living in Raleigh.
Yes.
You got a friend visiting from Miami or anywhere, actually. Where are you taking them for breakfast, lunch, and dinner in Raleigh?
Oh my gosh. All of my friends are going to hate me if I don't say their business. I think I would right now, I would take them to Dock 1053. You can do all those things.
Yes.
I want to go back to my roots so much, which I think about the world and Raleigh. I cut my teeth at Dock 1053, this fledgling industrial adaptive reuse project on the outskirts of downtown, now coupled with what is going to be called the Raleigh Ironworks District, coming soon with Grub Ventures and
the
whatnot.
other day. Looks very
really cool.
Impressive.
But again, it's connecting, I think, how we think about city. For a long time here in Raleigh, it was like downtown proper, north, east, south, west streets. We've expanded that, and I think we're continuing to expand that in interesting ways. So I take them to Dock 1053. I'd probably have breakfast at Hummingbird. If we stayed there and we didn't want to move the car, we would have lunch at Wilson's Eatery.
The burgers there are phenomenal.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I love their falafel. Linwood's great.
Like you can get a great pint and a burger and
you absolutely could.
Whatever.
And then I would probably finish. Hopefully she would do this if we were there. Or maybe we'd plan, if I was bringing someone in from Miami, we'd plan to do it like this. But one of my friends, Doreen Colondres, is from Puerto Rico, but spent a lot of time in Miami. We have a lot of mutual friends in Miami. She now lives here in the Triangle, and she runs a really cool entity. Y'all need to have her on the podcast called Vitis House. And so she has all kinds of fun social classes. She's a professional chef and also a wine expert. And so
Vitis House.
Vitis House. VITIS House.
Yeah, we'll put it in the show notes.
She's the best. She's so fun. Brings an incredible culinary perspective. Has like Malbecs and empanada night and all these different kinds of things. But it would be a great way to kind of have a nightcap all there on campus at Dock 1053 because she was one of our early loading dock members and uses a back training room that we have, the classroom at the loading dock, to really, show people what it looks like to bring together an interesting cuisine.
I love that.
And to
I hadn't heard of
do some
that.
wine pairing.
Yeah.
So another
Thanks
great
for
plug
bringing that to our attention. Awesome.
for Doreen, but also someone y'all would love to have on the podcast. She's really fun.
Awesome. You a coffee
I
or
love
a tea
it.
guy? And is there
I like both.
Is there a cafe you like to frequent?
I go to place at the table a lot. So I can see Maggie Kane. She's one of my good friends. I'm all over the place. Raleigh Raw, Brew. Andrew Cash at Jubala is a dear friend of mine.
Yeah, love
So
Jubala.
Jubala is a great spot.
Yeah.
I'll often get a long walk in from my house on New Bern Avenue out to the Hillsborough Street
That
site
is a long
and then
walk.
back.
Wow.
Sometimes I'll jump on a scooter too.
Awesome.
You cheat.
Good
But
thinking
I
time.
cheat a couple of times.
That's
But I
my-
do listen to podcasts as I'm going
That's
out
my
that
bit.
way.
I like
There you go.
walking or biking for either thinking time or listening to stuff. Yeah,
It's
That's
good.
great use of time.
In the past, I would have said I ran that way, but
get
that's
some-
not been true over the last 18 months.
Get some steps in, man.
Get some steps in.
There you go.
So I
Covid's
just
fault.
run down Morgan Street, basically, jump on Hillsborough, go there, and then head back. It's a good thinking time. But yeah, all those kinds of great spots. I love the coffee culture here.
Yeah.
I'm a big coffee person. I like tea. I haven't dabbled as much in tea. We'll do some chamomile at night at the house. Laura, my wife, likes tea a little bit more than I do. But coffee doesn't affect me caffeine-wise, as you might expect with the amount of energy I have.
Yeah.
It's not fueled by coffee. I could drink a cup of full steam coffee before I go to bed.
Really?
It wouldn't
My
affect me at all.
gosh, that's when I have
know,
my
it's
tea
terrible.
at
I
nighttime.
just- But
It's crazy.
so I think Dock 1053, it's a great spot. Not everybody
That's
knows about
awesome.
it. I think folks have come there maybe to Linwood,
Love it.
but there's a lot of great spots. And the people who run those entities
Uh-huh.
are people that I know believe in the kind of Raleigh that I see in the future.
That's
And so
great.
they're good folks. The Neon Shop at Glass would also be a place.
Is that in
I
the
would wanna
same area?
showcase. It is at Dock 1053.
Okay.
So there's a
Wow,
neon
you
shop
spend
back
a whole
there
day
that's
there.
incredible.
Wow. Yeah, that is a great day.
Nate and his team back there do some incredible work. There's a lot of incredible friends, but a lot of the neon that you're seeing around town
Yeah.
is coming
from
out of
there.
glass. Yeah, it's 1S, GLAS.
I had no
And
idea
Nate
that was
Schaefer
there.
is a hoot. So he is worth the price of admission if he's there.
Okay, move aside Vegas.
Yes, this is so great.
Raleigh's coming up
yeah.
with the neon.
So that would probably be my spot, as much as I do love a lot of different haunts around town.
Yeah.
So many cool
love
things. I mean,
it.
we feel like we've
check all
done
these
a
out.
lot in Raleigh. So many of those things we've never touched.
Yeah,
Like,
you should. That's
awesome,
a great
man.
spot for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Great day.
Thank you for that.
What else do we want to know? Can't miss attraction for an out-of-town visitor.
I love Moore Square. I have small kids.
Mm-hmm.
I just think Moore Square showcases a lot of really cool things in our city. Marbles is right there,
Yeah.
which we spend a lot of time.
Yes,
Marbles
we
is the
do
5 and
too.
the 3.5-year-old.
I've been there, done that. I've evolved from that.
Yes.
From Marbles. But,
Please.
it
We
is
love
a great
Marbles.
place for
Marbles
young
is the
kids.
best. All of our friends
Yeah.
at Marbles, we love you. You do such great
We
work.
love Marbles.
There's a time and a place for aging out of that.
Yeah, I don't want to go and
Yeah.
roll around in the ball pit if it's still there right now. I'm not sure. It's
I know.
probably
Yeah,
changed,
they do a
but,
great job of sanitizing. I see them all the time doing that. So
Not
kudos
because
to
of
Marbles.
that.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
like,
right.
Yeah.
We've done all the things. The golf
I've done all
exhibition
the
for my
things.
son was fantastic.
Do they still
I think
have the
Moore
hockey?
Square.
You can play
They
hockey
do,
upstairs. I
yeah.
love that. That's great.
I-
Although I get super competitive, I'm kind of like, I need to pull back a bit.
I'm
There's
like,
young
I think
kid-
we're
there's young
actually a
kids
lot
on the
more
ice
alike.
here.
Yeah, I think we're a
Well,
lot more
not
alike
ice,
than
but
we
like-
think we are. Yeah, I'm super competitive. Unfortunately, I'm like a different person. People are like, oh, that's nice. Then like I go play sports,
Yeah.
and you're like, you don't
Yeah.
want to talk to me.
Yeah.
I think Moore Square again. It's teasing out along with transfer. It's teasing out what it looks like to bring together a fuller picture of our city.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've spent time there, and we've talked about a lot of like best and brightest types of things here in our city. I think Moore Square is one of those humbling places because there's been an investment in that park. There's a lot of great things. If you go there, you see an interesting cross section of our city.
Yeah.
But there are still people who literally live outside who are unhoused at that square. And it reminds me of, again, the
True.
work that is to be done. Wonderful, world-class type of venue and space. But, as I'm enjoying that and buying a milkshake at Square Burger, there are people who are unhoused. And I hold that tension in my spirit when I'm there. So it's a humbling place. It's a life-giving place, but it's also a place that reminds me of where we ought to go to fill in a capital C perspective of community in our city.
I like that.
It transfers the same type of place. Incredible. I mean, Burial Beer, Transfer would be another one of those places, just incredible. Nick Neptune and Jason Queen and all the friends who have put that together have just done an incredible job. But it's right up against and I think when I'm there, I feel it, this interesting tension of gentrification is the hot button word, but really the systemic displacement of the culture and community that has long been in East and Southeast Raleigh. It's something that, I'll spend as much time as I can trying to figure out how we do a better job of, again, bringing together communities that have largely and sometimes systemically in our, our history here in the city been separated for a lot of different reasons by people who look like me.
Yeah.
We've got to do a better job.
Yeah,
We've got to.
we
And so
do.
those are kind of places that
Yeah.
I would showcase, but also tell a full story
Yeah,
about, not
yeah.
just sunny side up.
Yeah. I love it. The real story, and that keeps you
Yeah.
connected to your great ideals.
Yeah, I
and
hope so.
Something to work towards.
I think when you walk the city, you get a good perspective on
Yeah,
those types
I
of
think
things.
so.
That's another reason why I do the long
Yeah.
walks.
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
yeah,
that's so
yeah.
true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Get grounded and
Human
see
scale
the
type
real,
of
yeah.
perspective.
Yeah. Very
in the city.
important.
Then
As much as I believe in density, I think I just
Hmm.
said something that says like Clark is probably not the density person. I like density. I like mixed use better than I like single family or 40-story gold-plated condos. We can do both, but it also, again, we hold that tension of who's really benefiting from the development or the city building.
Yeah.
And I think about that every day. I try not to let it paralyze me, but I think about it every single day.
Thank you.
Yeah, great
Appreciate that.
suggestions.
Thank you.
Yeah, love Transfer Co and Moore Square. We're there quite often, but
I'm an East
No,
Sider,
we-
so
yeah.
I'm often on the
Yeah,
East side of town.
yeah,
I come
there
over
you
here.
go.
I love the warehouse district and all the great stuff's happening here,
Yeah.
but I live a lot on the East side of town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's all good, man. It's all good.
Yeah.
There's another fun place. Do you know where the Explorus site is? The big, large green field on New Bern Avenue? Okay.
Yeah.
You're going to come over
yes.
sometime.
That's it.
So,
Yeah.
Explorers
heard of
friends,
it.
we love you. Please don't hold to the no trespassing signs that are there, but my son and I go out there and we set up our little net, and he hits his golf balls. We call it the Southeast Raleigh Country Club. And so we are often out there in that field on the weekends. So you'll see us sometimes out in that field.
There you go. We're going to do a drive-by.
Right, just wave. Yeah, Bo will be stoked.
I'm going to bring my net
Bo will be
and my clubs. And
great.
ball.
I wish I was as good as Bo is.
Or a soccer
Bo
ball in
is
a net.
very, very good. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Perfect.
that's another fun spot on these ends.
Awesome.
All right. Well, so wrapping up, a question we like to ask all our guests before they leave us. If we were to offer up the phrase, "This is Raleigh," as a kind of idea or a branding, what couple of words or sentence comes to mind for you?
It's people. For me, Raleigh is people. It's not talent. I think those two things can oftentimes be conflated in our community, especially as we grow. For me, it's the interesting mix of people that we have who bring a lot to Raleigh. I think Raleigh's identity is still very much in flux. I think there are threads of conversations I hear that don't always go together. And so I'm really interested in how we bring that together, but in a way that is bigger than choosing either or. I live my life in the both and. And so how can we bring together these unique perspectives, people from different places, different cultures? And maybe this is coming back to Miami. I don't know. I hadn't thought about this until I said it out loud. But this kind of melting pot of people, that for me, if anything is Raleigh, it's a melting pot of people who have elected to call this place home, like chosen family. That's what we are here.
Totally.
Right?
We are. We are the chosen
Raleigh's not
family.
Miami, but there's some great diversity here.
It's true.
Which I love.
That's true.
great.
And it's diversity of perspective. It's diversity of race, of age, of gender, of industry.
It's a great mix.
It's a great mix of people. And I think that's what we're going to continue to see. I think as a community, we have to figure out how to open up the floodgates for that type of investment, not just dollars, but that kind of community building, community engagement type of perspective. Raleigh is people, and that is exactly what my mind goes to. Flashes of different friends that I've met in passing on the streets, that I've said hello to, that have said hello to me. I've opened a door that we've worked together. We're initially friends. Now we've worked together in business. It's that type of spirit that makes this place special. And I think that is a huge part of what makes this place sticky for a lot of different people, and why they come here and why they stay here. So.
Sticky.
I love that.
I like that.
Sticky.
It's a weird word to say out loud, but it really conveys the
works.
picture.
I get
It does.
It's a strange word.
Yeah.
We want to be a sticky community,
I
right?
know
We
what
want to
you're
be a place that
Yes.
people don't just come here for a job that has commas and zeros in it, and then realize everybody just waves to you pleasantly, but shuts their door and closes up their garage. That's not the place we want to be. We want to be the kind of place where we show up, where we participate, where we invite people. And again, that's what we have in front of us right now.
Yeah.
And
Awesome.
that's really what we discovered in 2004, and we made it 17 years to be able to stick here legally. Finally made it happen, but that was a choice, and that was a long journey to make it happen.
Sure.
But it's that stickiness and the people that you do
Sure.
talk about. Yeah,
I am tempted. My wife would probably try to keep me honest and write something in the comments section of the podcast. There's some times where I feel like Raleigh can still feel too small because I grew up in Miami.
yeah, it would. Yeah,
But again, I look to the future
Yeah.
of how we're building strategically and inclusively. And that's what keeps this place sticky for me.
yeah.
Sometimes I'm like, I just want to move to a bigger place. I don't know.
You just
I
take
hold that
a
tension.
trip. Just take a trip there and get away. And
Right.
Get it out of
Yeah,
your system.
it's
And
great.
We
can
love
do it.
like we do all the time. We love coming home to Raleigh.
Yeah.
That's a great place to come back to.
Yep. No, it's true. It's
We
true.
like you
So,
being here with all your
Yeah.
ideas and
Thank
your
you.
purpose and mission.
It's a lot of
thank you.
ideas.
I
All
love it.
all the people
I
who
love
listen to
it.
the podcast
Yeah,
will be
my
like,
head
wow,
is-
there's a lot of
my head
ideas.
is spinning.
Will these
Yeah.
ever come to fruition? We shall
Yes,
see.
We'll make it.
yeah.
We'll make it happen.
Maybe going on the record like this makes me
know, it
have to. Oh, it does. Oh
It
my
holds
gosh.
accountability.
Yeah,
Now, people when they see you
we'll
on
have to
the
get you back on the
street,
podcast
Oh my
in the
gosh.
future and see what's come to fruition. But yeah, this has been awesome, man.
It's great.
Cheers. It's
Thank
been
you.
super interesting,
Pleasure.
informative, inspiring, and Innovate Raleigh. Where can people find out about that?
Yeah.
Like the website and how to
Yep.
get tickets.
It's a great
What's
question.
what's
www.innovateraleigh.com, as you would expect it to be spelled. You can look under the Summits tab. Again, this is the 10th anniversary. Our theme is Then, Now, Next. It's going to be a really interesting cross-section of people. if you've been to Innovate Raleigh Summits in the past, it's going to have the same kind of look and feel and energy of being that catalyst and convener for important conversations. But I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised that there's another interesting crop of folks who are going to speak into what is next in Raleigh.
Yeah.
It's not the same crowd of people as much as I like those people. It's not to diminish those people, but there are new voices. There's new faces. There's new perspectives. And I think it's going to help us to tell a better story in the future. And so you can find it there. If you have any issues with that, please reach out. I'm happy to share my email, which is just Clark, my first name, at innovateraleigh.com. So reach out to me. Would love to have you there, and excited to do more of this in the future.
Yeah,
Thank you. I'm very excited.
Totally. I was just going to ask you, is there anywhere that you hang out more often, like LinkedIn or Twitter? People can follow you.
I like the gram. I'm a millennial. I'm a hardcore. I'm like
okay.
I was 13 in the year 2000. Not to date myself too much here. So I'm 34.
I won't.
But yeah, people are going to do the math online. I'm very well connected.
What's your
I'm
handle?
probably too connected. It's just my first name and my last name. So just at Clark Rinehart. And I like Instagram because I like pictures and I like stories being told with pictures visually. But I'm on all the platforms a lot, much to my wife's chagrin. Yeah. So,
Perfect. Well, we can share a link to that.
Yeah, come on.
At the bottom of the podcast. But
very cool.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Clark. It's been inspiring, and thanks for listening, everybody.
Yep.
As always, we'll be on every podcast channel. We'll be on IGTV. We'll be on our YouTube channel. So stay tuned for that, and hopefully you can make it to Innovate Raleigh and go and say hi
might
to
see you
Clark.
there.
And
Yeah,
tell us
come
that
find me.
This is
Say hi.
Raleigh sent you. Yeah.
That'd be even better. Yeah, that's great.
Thanks,
Thanks,
guys.
guys. See you in the
Stay
next
tuned.
episode.
Bye.